Based on some of the private questions that I'm receiving, the moral and the sentiment towards NIO stock is currently pretty low, and this also shows in the stock price. So let me share my personal opinion on things as somebody who is holding NIO since $3. That's my average cost, and so far I haven't sold, not during the tech rotation, not during the recent China fear and so on. But this is of course just my personal opinion and my expectations towards my investments, so that's nowhere near trading or investment advice. You need to form your own opinion as always and do your own due diligence. So personally, I don't have much negative sentiment right now, but I still feel that in the community, and by the way, the community is growing greatly. I see many new Twitter accounts talking about NIO, other YouTube channels covering the stock, and some of them going in depth. So that's encouraging and cool to see. I think the NIO gang or this kind of community is something really not normal, and that's great to see out there for a Chinese stock actually. And so, well, I think it can be explained why others might be disappointed. For instance, those who got in maybe after the big bull run in 2020 by NIO stock and maybe bought in the 30s, 40s, 50s and so on. And now we have like lots of positive news actually coming from NIO, but still the stock wasn't moving as much. We have maybe not so fast growing growth numbers this time in terms of deliveries, particularly if you compare it now in the recent months with, for instance, like XPeng or Li Auto. So that may have depressed the sentiment here a little bit. And of course, you have the big issue after the tech rotation, like the February highs, now also in addition to that, the fear around Chinese stocks, which I have tried to explain much more on this channel recently. But for me, it is really all about the long game here, and I don't see many opportunities out there actually that I can think can actually compete with NIO in terms of deploying capital in the long run. And that's possibly one of the biggest reasons why I haven't sold despite more than 1,000% in gains so far, is that I think NIO still from here has up to or even more than 10x of an upside potential. That doesn't mean that it will reach this potential, but I do think it has this potential. And if you are interested in that, join my Patreon community where I did my business case projections on where NIO could be by 2030. And so I still think it has all of these upsides, but on the same time, like on a long-term horizon, I don't see that NIO is going much lower than what it currently is. Like even if the best scenarios don't unfold, I would still think like in 5 years, 10 years time, even if there is almost no growth like in terms of the stock price, my investment is still okay over this period in time, and with all of the upside potential that is still inherent into the stock. And so I am in this comfortable position where I can see if this investment thesis in the long run is still playing out or not. And regard what currently is happening as what it is just short-term sentiment. And lots of investors, especially the newer ones, have of course like very short expectations for NIO, and then of course would also argue that the current sales and delivery growth isn't as good as other opportunities there, and then there is opportunity cost aligned with making an investment in NIO in the short term. And I would also say that lots of investors are unfortunately missing the bigger picture and a long-term view of where this company could go, and even basic understanding, for instance, like how valuations work. For example, what is the market capitalization and what is the actual share price? So I see comments out there like XPeng has overtaken NIO, which is just ridiculous, just on the share price. So, I mean, that doesn't make much sense. And here is where I would draw a clear line between NIO and other investment opportunities, because I think there's just this one-time opportunity with NIO of a Chinese company that is not close to anything else around there. And I think this could compare, for instance, to what has happened to Tesla back in 2013 when the share price ran up 700%. And maybe some people have started buying in here maybe in April 2014, where it was selling off quite a bit. And what could happen next to NIO as well is a run up testing the last all-time highs again. But as you can see, this can have a very long side-term movement actually going on till 2017. So for years until we finally see also a big outbreak in Tesla. So that should add a little bit of a long-term perspective of how things can go. And I'm talking about years here, right? So if you're not prepared to holding a stock for, let's say, 5 years to 10 years time, then possibly you won't benefit from those ultra long-term gains, because ultimately timing the market is different to time in the markets. And I think what is the most important fact here is also where can NIO go in the very long term, and actually is there this ultimate potential that NIO can become much more wealth than today. And I think it is. And I think there are also some explanations to what is currently happening. So maybe for a second take the perspective of the NIO management and think for yourself, like the stock has risen more than 1000%. There's lots of expectations by investors towards your company. Now, how much are your incentives actually now in 2021 to kind of outgrow the expectations of the investors once again? As I've pointed out many times, I think NIO is a totally different beast, for instance, than some of the competitors in the lower cost segment. And so NIO doesn't really depend too much on the volume growth. Although, yes, of course, they need to grow, like, let's say, roughly 100% year over year. But do they need to grow 140% this year and maybe losing some gains in the next year? I think it's actually maybe even smarter to, as a management, to take a long-term perspective as well. They have now stuff to manage like the ET7 rollout, which they, I think, right now are prioritizing in terms of preparing the market rollout and so on. And also looking to next year, where NIO will actually drive sales and scale the rollout of the ET7 not only in China but globally. At the same time, they're entering into entirely new territory with an entire ecosystem rollout in Norway, where we now see the first pictures of the cars actually arriving, and also the NIO users testing there in Norway the cars before they get delivered next month. So these are really big issues to solve from a management perspective right now. And so even if there is currently maybe a little bit more of a moderate growth, it still is a 100% year-over-year growth, and might lead to 95,000 sales this year, which I think would be totally in line. And then it is actually easier for the management next year to fulfill maybe another 100% year-over-year growth, other than if they pump it out, all of those cars this year already. It makes it much harder next year to scale again 100% year-over-year. So in the long run, this might be not only good for the company, but also good for the stock. And so whereas I do understand all of these short-term expectations, and well, yeah, of course, there are some gains out there to be had, but also 2020 has been quite exceptional in the overall market. And of course, the issue is always, will you be committed and also convinced to align as much capital necessary as to make generational breakthrough in terms of your personal finances? Because ultimately, NIO already has achieved something that others haven't got or cannot achieve. This ecosystem, the positioning as premium to luxury, now even outselling the German competitors in China, and also this ecosystem with the social character, which I think, and I'm personally having also short-term expectations towards the e-commerce side here, which haven't got fulfilled so far, but still I think this long-term opportunity there in the social commerce area is such tremendous. And it's funny to see that even, for instance, Tesla is trying to adopt such kind of innovations from NIO here with such kind of a membership area, which hasn't taken off for Tesla as well, a company that is also living a lot by its users, but they still can't replicate this kind of a social network there as NIO is doing it. And also interesting to see, for instance, that Tesla's delivering overseas is working without much service. You go to the delivery area, you have like 10 minutes to check your car, and then you're being sent off. But in China, they do it whole differently, with lots of presents and all of the social flavor necessary to sell in China. And I think they are trying to achieve a service level that NIO has established there. And so, all of these are just tiny indicators, but give me lots of good sentiment, and also proof that I think that NIO is onto something, and kind of a generational company like Tesla, like Apple, but this time from China. So let me know down in the comments whether you agree or not with my overall long-term thesis here. I'm happy to see also the negative comments around that. I think it's reasonable that some of you have already sold your NIO position after making such huge gains, and it's of course hard to continue and believing into a company. And of course, for some out there, it's maybe even the best thing to take some profits at this level right now. But for me, that's not the way to do it. And yeah, thank you guys for watching and see you in the next one.